The air was thick with the scent of ozone, a metallic tang that clung to the back of my throat as I stood at the edge of the crossroads. It wasn't a place you could find on any map, nor was it a place you could stumble upon by accident. No, this was a liminal space, a sliver of existence where the boundaries between worlds blurred and the fabric of reality itself seemed to fray. To my left, the sky shimmered with the golden light of Olympus, its peaks piercing the heavens like jagged teeth. To my right, the air was suffused with a soft, ethereal glow, the kind that made you feel both insignificant and infinite, the kingdom of heaven. I shouldn't have been here. I was no one special, just a philosopher, a seeker of truths in a world that seemed to have forgotten them. But the visions had started weeks ago, vivid and unrelenting. At first they were fragments, a storm of lightning and light, two figures standing at the edge of oblivion, and a voice, deep and resonant, whispering, "Bring them together." I had tried to ignore them, to write them off as the ramblings of an overactive mind. But then Hermes came. He appeared in my study one evening, his winged sandals barely touching the ground, his caduceus glowing faintly in the dim light. "Irene," he said, his voice like the rustle of parchment, "you've been chosen." "Chosen for what?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound composed. "To prevent the end of everything," he replied, his eyes piercing through me. "The storm you've seen, it's not just a vision, it's a warning. Zeus and Jesus must meet, or the cosmos will unravel." I laughed. It was a nervous, disbelieving sound. "Zeus? Jesus? You expect me to believe that the king of the Olympian gods and the son of the Christian god need to meet, and that I'm the one to make it happen?" Hermes didn't laugh. He simply nodded, his expression grave. "You are the bridge, Irene, the only one who can traverse both realms. The storm is coming, and if they do not meet, it will consume us all." And so, here I was, standing at the crossroads, my heart pounding in my chest as the air around me crackled with energy. The storm was closer now, a swirling maelstrom of light and shadow that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I could feel its pull, a magnetic force that threatened to drag me into its depths. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my feet sinking into the soft, glowing ground. The journey to Olympus had been surreal, a path paved with stars, each step taking me further from the world I knew. The air grew colder as I ascended, the golden light of the god's realm growing brighter with every passing moment. When I finally reached the gates, they loomed before me like a monument to eternity, their surfaces etched with scenes of divine power and mortal folly. The guards, towering figures clad in armor that gleamed like the sun, stopped me at the entrance. "State your business, mortal," one of them growled, his voice like thunder. "I come with a message for Zeus," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my insides. "A warning of a storm that threatens not just Olympus but all of creation." The guards exchanged a glance, then stepped aside. "He awaits you in the throne room," the other said, his tone softer now, almost reverent. The throne room was everything I had imagined and more. The ceilings stretched so high they seemed to vanish into the heavens, and the walls were adorned with tapestries that depicted the gods' greatest triumphs. At the far end of the room, seated on a throne of gold and ivory, was Zeus. His presence was overwhelming, a force of nature contained within the form of a man. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto mine as I approached. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber, "to bring such tidings to the king of the gods?" "My name is Irene," I said, bowing my head in respect. "I am but a messenger, sent to warn you of a storm that threatens to destroy both Olympus and the kingdom of heaven. You must meet with Jesus, the Son of God, to prevent it." Zeus leaned back in his throne, his expression unreadable. "Jesus," he repeated, the name rolling off his tongue like a foreign word. "The one they call the Savior. Why should I concern myself with him?" "Because," I said, meeting his gaze, "this storm is not of this world. It is the work of Kronos, the forgotten god of time. He seeks to erase both the old and the new, to reset the cosmos to its beginning. If you do not meet with Jesus, there will be nothing left to rule. For a long moment, Zeus said nothing. Then slowly, he rose from his throne, his form seeming to grow larger with every passing second. "Very well," he said at last. "I will meet this Jesus, but know this, mortal. If this is some trick, some ploy to undermine my authority, the consequences will be dire." I nodded, relief flooding through me. One down, one to go. The journey to the kingdom of heaven was different, less tangible, more like stepping into a dream. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the sound of distant hymns. The gates were not gates at all, but a shimmering veil of light that parted as I approached. Jesus was waiting for me, his presence calm and reassuring. He looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world, yet there was no judgment in them, only understanding. "You've come a long way, Irene," he said, his voice gentle. "I have," I replied, bowing my head. "I bring a message from Zeus. He has agreed to meet with you." Jesus nodded as if he had expected this. "The storm," he said. "I've felt it too. The balance is fragile, and Kronos seeks to shatter it." "Then you'll meet with Zeus?" I asked, hope rising in my chest. "Yes," he said, his gaze steady. "But know this, Irene, the meeting of gods is not without risk. The outcome is uncertain and the stakes are higher than you can imagine." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling over me like a shroud. "I understand," I said. "Good," he replied. "Then let us go." As we made our way back to the crossroads, the storm grew louder, its roar like the voice of 1,000 winds. The air was electric, charged with a power that made my skin prickle. And then, as we reached the center of the crossroads, I saw him, Zeus, standing tall and imposing, his thunderbolt crackling in his hand. The two figures regarded each other in silence, the tension between them palpable, and then, as if on cue, the storm erupted, a vortex of light and shadow that seemed to tear the very fabric of reality. It was beginning. The storm roared around us, a tempest of light and shadow that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Zeus stood, tall, his thunderbolt crackling with raw power, his eyes fixed on Jesus, who remained calm and still, his presence a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around us. I stood between them, feeling impossibly small, my heart pounding as the weight of the moment pressed down on me. "So," Zeus said, his voice booming over the storm, "you are the one they call the Son of God." Jesus nodded, his expression serene. "And you are Zeus, king of the Olympian gods. It is an honor to meet you." Zeus's lips curled into a smirk, though there was no warmth in it. "An honor, is it? Tell me, Savior, what do you know of honor? Your followers preach humility and meekness, virtues that have no place in the world of gods." "Humility is not weakness," Jesus replied, his voice steady. "It is the recognition that power is not meant to dominate but to serve." Zeus laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the crossroads. "Serve? The gods do not serve. We rule, we command, we shape the world as we see fit." I could feel the tension between them thickening, the air growing heavier with each passing moment. The storm seemed to feed off their conflict, its winds howling louder, its light growing brighter. I stepped forward, my voice trembling but determined. "Please," I said, "this isn't why I brought you here. The storm, it's not just a natural phenomenon. It's the work of Kronos, the forgotten god of time. He seeks to erase both of you, to reset the cosmos to its beginning. If you don't work together, there will be nothing left to rule or save." Zeus turned his gaze to me, his eyes narrowing. "And how do you know this, mortal? What proof do you have that this is more than the ravings of a frightened girl?" Before I could respond, the ground beneath us trembled, and the storm surged, its vortex spinning faster, its light blinding. From within the chaos, a figure emerged, tall and gaunt, his form shifting and indistinct as though he were made of time itself. His eyes glowed with an ancient, malevolent light, and his voice was a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Kronos, I whispered, the name slipping from my lips like a curse. Irene, he said, his voice echoing, in my mind. You have done well to bring them here, but your efforts are in vain. The old and the new cannot coexist. One must fall so that the other may rise. Zeus raised his thunderbolt, his expression fierce. You dare challenge me? Kronos, I am Zeus, king of the gods. I will not be undone by a forgotten relic. Kronos smiled, a cold, humorless expression. You are but a shadow of what you once were, Zeus. Your time has passed. And you, he said, turning to Jesus, you are a fleeting spark in the grand tapestry of existence. Your light will fade, as all things must. Jesus stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. Time may erode all things, but the spirit endures. You cannot destroy what you do not understand. Kronos laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. We shall see. The storm surged again, and Kronos raised his hands, the air around him warping and twisting as though time itself were unraveling. I felt a pull, a force that threatened to drag me into the vortex, and I stumbled, struggling to keep my footing. Irene, Jesus called, his voice cutting through the chaos. You are the bridge, you must hold us together. I didn't understand what he meant, but I could feel something stirring within me. A power I hadn't known I possessed. My visions flashed before my eyes, fragments of the prophecy I had seen. The child of God and the king of the gods must unite, or all will be lost. I closed my eyes, focusing on the energy within me, the connection I felt to both realms. The air around me grew warm, and I could feel the power of Olympus and the kingdom of heaven flowing through me, merging into something greater. When I opened my eyes, the storm seemed to slow, its fury momentarily held at bay. Zeus and Jesus stood on either side of me, their expressions shifting from conflict to realization. She's the key, Zeus said, his voice tinged with awe. The bridge between us, Jesus added. Kronos snarled, his form flickering as though he were losing control. No, this cannot be. I stepped forward, my voice steady now, filled with a confidence I hadn't known I possessed. You're wrong, Kronos. The old and the new can coexist. They must. And I will ensure that they do. I raised my hands and the power within me surged, a brilliant light that pushed back the storm, forcing Kronos to retreat. He screamed, a sound of rage and desperation, as the vortex began to collapse in on itself. But as the storm dissipated, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, a reminder of the toll this power was taking on me. I stumbled, my vision blurring, and the last thing I saw before everything went dark was Zeus and Jesus reaching out to catch me. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer at the crossroads. The storm was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. The air was thick with an otherworldly tension, and the ground beneath me felt like glass, smooth and cold. Above me stretched an endless void, dotted with faint shimmering lights that resembled stars, but pulsed with a rhythm that felt alive. I was in a place outside of time, a realm where the rules of reality no longer applied. Zeus and Jesus stood on either side of me, their forms glowing faintly in the dim light. Zeus's thunderbolt crackled with restrained energy, while Jesus's presence radiated a calm, steady warmth. Both of them were looking at me, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. Where are we? I asked, my voice echoing strangely in the vast emptiness. The void, Zeus said, his voice low and wary. A place beyond the reach of time and space. Kronos has brought us here to weaken us. He fears what we might accomplish together, Jesus added, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where a faint ripple of light was beginning to form. But he underestimates the power of unity. I struggled to my feet, my body feeling heavy and unsteady. The pain in my chest had subsided, but I could still feel the lingering effects of the power I had unleashed. It was as though I had tapped into something far greater than myself, something that had left a mark on my soul. Irene, Zeus said, turning to me, you are the bridge between us. Your power is the key to defeating Kronos, but you must be careful. The void feeds on doubt and fear, If you falter, it will consume you. I nodded, though his words sent a chill through me. I had never asked for this role, never wanted to be the one to stand between gods, but here I was, and there was no turning back. The ripple of light in the distance grew brighter, and from it emerged Kronos, his form more solid now, his eyes burning with a cold, ancient fury. He raised his hands, and the ground beneath us trembled, cracks spreading like spiderwebs across the glass-like surface. "You cannot win," Kronos said, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "The old must give way to the new, and the new must fade into the old. This is the cycle of time, and it cannot be broken." "We'll see about that," Zeus said, stepping forward, his thunderbolt crackling with energy. He hurled it at Kronos, the bolt streaking through the air like a comet. But Kronos simply raised a hand and the bolt slowed, then disintegrated into nothingness. Jesus stepped forward, his hands glowing with a soft golden light. "You speak of cycles, Kronos, but you fail to understand the power of change. Time is not a prison. It is a river, and we are its currents." He extended his hands, and the light spread outward, forming a barrier between us and Kronos. The cracks in the ground began to heal, and the air grew warmer. But Kronos only smiled, a cold, humorless expression. "You think your light can hold me back?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I am time itself. I am inevitable." He raised his hands again, and the barrier began to crack, the light flickering as though it were struggling to hold. I could feel the strain in the air, the weight of Kronos' power pressing down on us. "Irene," Jesus said, his voice calm but urgent, "you must act now. Use your power to unite us." I hesitated, my mind racing. How could I, a mortal, unite two gods? But then I remembered the visions, the fragments of the prophecy that had led me here. I was the bridge, the connection between the old and the new. And if I didn't act, everything would be lost. I closed my eyes, focusing on the energy within me. I could feel the power of Olympus raw and untamed, and the light of heaven warm and steady. I reached out, grasping both energies, and pulled them together. The effect was immediate. The air around me crackled with energy, and a brilliant light erupted from my body, spreading outward in a wave. The cracks in the ground healed, and the barrier between us and Kronos grew stronger. Kronos snarled, his form flickering as though he were losing control. "No, this cannot be." But it was too late. The light continued to spread, enveloping everything in its path. I could feel the power of Zeus and Jesus flowing through me, merging into something greater than the sum of its parts. Kronos screamed, a sound of rage and desperation, as the light consumed him. His form began to dissolve, breaking apart into fragments of light and shadow. "You cannot destroy me," he cried, his voice echoing in the void. "I am time. I will return." And then he was gone, the light fading as quickly as it had come. The void was silent once more, the air still and calm. I collapsed to my knees, my body trembling with exhaustion. The power I had unleashed had taken its toll, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. Zeus and Jesus approached, their expressions a mix of awe and concern. "You did it," Zeus said, his voice tinged with respect. "You united us." "But at what cost?" Jesus asked, his gaze fixed on me. "Irene, you have given everything to save us. We must ensure that your sacrifice is not in vain." I looked up at them, my vision blurring as the exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Now," Zeus said, "we return to our realms. But the balance has been restored, thanks to you. And you," Jesus added, "will be remembered as the one who bridged the gap between the old and the new." As they spoke, the void began to fade, the glass-like ground dissolving into light. I felt myself being pulled back, the weight of the void lifting as I returned to the crossroads. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the ground, the storm gone and the air calm. Zeus and Jesus stood over me, their forms glowing faintly in the dim light. "Rest now, Irene," Jesus said, his voice gentle. "You have done enough." And as I closed my eyes, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The storm had passed, and the gods had been united. But deep down I knew that this was only the beginning. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer at the crossroads. The air was calm, the storm a distant memory. I lay on a soft bed of grass, the sky above me a tranquil blue, dotted with clouds that seemed to glow faintly in the sunlight. The tension that had gripped me for so long was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Zeus and Jesus stood nearby, their forms no longer glowing with divine energy, but still radiating an aura of power. They were speaking in low voices, their tones respectful but cautious. It was strange to see them like this. Two figures who had once been so at odds, now united by a shared purpose. I sat up slowly, my body still aching from the ordeal. "What happened?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Zeus turned to me, his expression uncharacteristically soft. "You succeeded, Irene. You united us, and together we banished Kronos. The storm is gone, and the realms are safe." "But at a great cost," Jesus added, his gaze filled with compassion. "You gave everything to bring us together. Your strength and sacrifice will not be forgotten." I looked down at my hands, still trembling slightly. I didn't do it alone. I couldn't have. "Perhaps not," Zeus said, his voice tinged with grudging respect. "But you were the catalyst. Without you, we would have destroyed each other, and Kronos would have won." Jesus nodded. "You are the bridge, Irene, the one who connects the old and the new. Your role is far from over." I frowned, a flicker of unease stirring within me. "What do you mean?" "The balance has been restored," Jesus explained, "but it is fragile. The meeting of gods is not the end, but the beginning. There will be others who seek to disrupt the harmony you have created." Zeus crossed his arms, his expression darkening. "Kronos was not the only forgotten god. There are others, older, more powerful beings who have slumbered for eons. They will not take kindly to the changes you have set in motion." I swallowed hard, the weight of their words settling over me. "So what do I do?" "You continue," Jesus said simply. "You guide others as you have guided us. You show them that the old and the new can coexist, that there is strength in unity." Zeus grunted in agreement. "You are no longer just a mortal, Irene. You are something more. A guardian of the balance, a keeper of the peace." I looked at them, their words echoing in my mind. It was a lot to take in, more than I had ever imagined. But deep down, I knew they were right. This was my destiny, the path I had been chosen to walk. "I understand," I said, my voice steady despite the fear that still lingered. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect the balance." Zeus nodded, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Good. You have the strength of the gods within you, Irene. Use it wisely." Jesus stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You are not alone. We will be watching over you, guiding you when you need it. But the journey is yours to make." I felt a warmth spread through me at his touch, a sense of reassurance that eased the weight of my doubts. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Zeus turned away, his form beginning to shimmer with golden light. "I must return to Olympus. There is much to be done, and my people will need guidance in the days to come." Jesus nodded. "And I must return to heaven. But know this, Irene. You have changed us. You have shown us that there is more to divinity than power and pride. For that we are grateful." As they spoke, their forms began to fade, the light around them growing brighter until it was almost blinding. I shielded my eyes, and when I looked again, they were gone. I was alone, but not truly. The air around me seemed to hum with a quiet energy, a reminder of the power I now carried within me. I stood, brushing the grass from my clothes, and looked out at the horizon. The world seemed different now, brighter, more alive. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my new purpose settle over me. I was no longer just Irene, the philosopher. I was the bridge, the one who connected the old and the new. And though the road ahead would be difficult, I knew I was ready. As I began to walk, a faint vision flickered at the edge of my mind, a glimpse of other divine figures, their forms shrouded in shadow. Odin, Shiva, Anubis. They were waiting, watching. The meeting of Zeus and Jesus was just the beginning. There would be others, and I would be there to guide them. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced the storm and emerged stronger. And as I walked, I felt a sense of peace knowing that I was exactly where I was meant to be.